Welcome back to Beyond the Wormhole and Kerbal Space Program. Today we're taking this giant interstellar craft using the Far Future Technologies mod by Nertea. This is like a sequel to like the Near Future tech mods, and it just kind of like adds some like really high-tech propulsion systems to KSP. This is like a fusion craft, or yeah, it uses a giant mirror cell engine. I'll put a link down to a good Scott Manley video where he walks through kind of like some of the functions, or I guess some of the types of these engines here. But basically it's like the most advanced you could go in terms of like realistic engine concepts in Kerbal Space Program. And yeah, so this is our launch, right? So we're just getting into orbit, and I'm going to rendezvous with my space station that I put in orbit last episode. It's kind of like a shipyard type thing. There it is. I've just fast forwarded to the rendezvous to save on time. And I'm going to dock here in this little shipyard. Today we're going to a planet that orbits the black hole really close to the black hole Kcalbeloh in the Kcalbeloh Planet Pack. So this is pretty cool. We haven't been to any of those yet, which is one of the reasons why we need these far future technologies, is because the orbital speeds like down really close to the wormhole, or not the wormhole, the black hole, are incredibly fast. So we need something really efficient with a ton of long range. So this is the interior of kind of like the space station. I've got IVA installed, or free IVA installed, which allows us to you know, look through the insides of the parts and move around the interior of the space station. And I'm just checking out the ship that we've got docked here. It's pretty cool. Fits really nicely in this shipyard. We're going to check out this engine here. It's pretty big, actually. Just checking it out from the bottom. And this is the interior of the craft itself. So there's our command pod. This is kind of like a habitation module here. Some sleeping bags on the wall. And we also have a centrifuge behind this, but we can't enter it right now because it's not inflated. But we're going to get ready to leave the space station now and plot a course to Sarnus, which is where the wormhole that connects the Kcalbeloh system to the Kerbal system orbits. It orbits kind of far out in the Sarnus system, which is the Saturn analog to the Kerbal system with the Outer Planets mod installed. But if you don't have the Outer Planets mod installed, Kcalbeloh will place the wormhole around Joule. So I've just detached and inflated the centrifuge module and spun it up to about half a G. And we're going to start our trajectory towards Sarnus. So the way these engines work in Far Future is they take a ton of electricity. So I have a fusion reactor here, or a fission reactor here, to generate enough electricity. And then you have to charge up the engine, actually, to even start it. And then you have to have enough radiators to make sure that it doesn't overheat, because they produce a ton of heat. So you can kind of see my radiators start to glow there. But yeah, it's not super like high thrust to weight ratio kind of thing. But it is really efficient. So the burns take a long time. But as you can see, if you look down at my staging, I have about 200,000 meters per second of delta V in this thing, which is pretty cool. Another thing about this engine is that it has an afterburn mode where you can inject some extra like liquid hydrogen into it, and it increases the thrust to weight factor, but also kind of decreases the efficiency. So like in a specific use case where you want higher thrust to weight, you can switch that on, and use the afterburn mode to get a little bit higher thrust. So we're just warping out of the Kerbin system. I've got Sarnus set as my target. It looks like our transfer burn's about 2,500 meters per second of delta V. And I fast forward through a lot of these burns. Some of the burns in this video get up to about 6 hours long, which is crazy. But I've shortened them for your viewing pleasure by like speeding up the video like 20 times at least sometimes. So right now I'm just doing a inclination match burn so that I can just burn a little more normal relative to Sarnus, and then that will kind of line up our orbit a little bit better. And so we're going to be aiming for this wormhole, which is the thing that I just set as my target. And I'm going to try to encounter it at my periapsis and just kind of thread the needle. I don't have to circularize or anything around it. You can actually save fuel if you just go straight through it, especially if you don't want to stop at it on the other side. So I'm just setting that up right now. You have to kind of enter it at a altitude of below 30,000 meters, I think, to actually enter. Anyway, let's just warp ahead into the Sarnus system. Here's the wormhole. We've arrived at year 5, day 280. I'll let you guys just watch for a second while we enter. Alright, we're on the other side. We're in the Kcalbeloh system now. The wormhole on this end orbits a planet called Sarah, which is kind of like a Mars-like planet with rings, which is interesting. And it's actually put us on this really convenient flyby. We'll be able to get really close and just check it out. You can see the black hole in the distance there on the right. That's kind of our eventual destination, but right now this is Sarah, which is kind of like a deserty planet with rings, which is pretty cool. When we threaded kind of like the needle through the wormhole, it put us on this escape trajectory that kind of like took us past the planet already. So now I'm plotting my course out of the Sun Orc system, which is a orange dwarf type star that this planet and the wormhole orbits. And we need to exit the system retrograde relative to its motion around the black hole. So all of the stars in this system orbit the black hole at its center. So we're going to be exiting the system retrograde relative to its motion, which will drop our periapsis on the other side, down towards the black hole, as you can see here. So there's the Sun Orc system fading in the distance. Another thing I should mention is I kind of have a thing that I do after I'm done burning is I shut off kind of like all the electricity and all the reactors. I do that to preserve the lifespan of my fusion reactor. But yeah, so I do that kind of like in between every burn. Right now, I'm kind of thinking about trying to do a gravity assist off of the the brown dwarf star, but I'm kind of deciding against it. I'm just going to go straight towards the planet that we're targeting, which I've set as my target. It's that kind of yellow orbit really close into the black hole. It's an ice planet called Uleg, and it's on a really, really high inclination, which makes it difficult, which adds another layer of difficulty, I should say. So right now I'm just trying to drop my periapsis down to intersect it while also matching my inclination in one burn. You save a lot of delta V doing your inclination burns farther out, or I guess moving more slowly. So I guess the further out you are from, I guess, your eventual destination, the more efficient or I guess the higher your apoapsis, the more efficient your inclination matching burns will be. So I'm warping out to that maneuver right now. I had to charge up that engine and enable the reactor, turn on the radiators and fire. And this burn is about 2 hours. So I've just fast forwarded it, so you guys don't have to watch the whole thing. Alright, I'm just lowering my periapsis a little bit further so I can get that intersection. And it looks like I'm going to have to do some minor adjustments to make sure that I don't encounter Sunorc on the other side when I float back up to my apoapsis again. So I'm going to warp down to my periapsis, close to the black hole, and we'll burn retrograde a little bit so that we lower our apoapsis to not intersect the orbit of Sunorc again. Anyway, this is the closest we've ever been to the black hole in this series, which is crazy. So this is kind of a really special episode, I think. Alright, just one more maneuver to match the inclination just a little bit more precisely. And we're also trying to get those close encounter nodes there to get on top of each other so that we can get that encounter with Uleg. So I'm just kind of burning radial in till that encounter. Okay, so we got an encounter now. Alright. And then I'm just going to adjust my flyby, I guess. Cool, so now I'm just checking out how much delta V it actually takes to circularize, and it's looking like it takes like 41,000 meters per second. So that's like a 6-hour burn. So that's a lot longer than we will be in the sphere of influence of Uleg. So we're gonna have to treat this kind of like a orbital rendezvous, kind of like almost with an asteroid. So before we've even entered the sphere of influence of this planet, we can point retrograde relative to target and start burning. I guess we can figure out, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to figure out what is like 6 or 5-ish hours before we even enter the system. And then I'm just kind of using that T-minus like time countdown there to figure out when to start burning. So I'm going to try to do it like 6 hours or 5 hours or so before I even enter the system. And I'll just be burning continuously for 6 hours until we are slowed down enough to circularize around the planet. So while I fast forward through that, I'll get some views of the black hole through the cockpit, which is really cool. Anyway, the reason why the burns, or I guess the maneuvers this close to the black hole are so expensive is because the orbital speeds at this altitude above the black hole are insanely high. We're going like almost like 140 kilometers per second right now, just at this orbital velocity that we're at right now. But we need to slow down, of course, to circularize. You can see it in the distance there. Alright, fast forwarded till we're just about to enter the sphere of influence. and we will see how much. We'll do some science. You guys can pause and read that if you want. We'll see how much it finally takes to circularize. About 4,000 meters per second. So to burn about 6 minutes. I'll actually switch on the afterburn mode right here so we can get that extra thrust. So now we're burning our liquid hydrogen reserves to get this higher thrust on the afterburning mode. And we've captured around Uleg. About 36 years into the mission. So I'm just dropping my periapsis down to an altitude where I want to circularize. Here's the view from inside the ship. So I'm just going to circularize even more. I think one of the challenging parts about this planet actually is that it has pretty high gravity for a planet of this size, I guess. But it has a really low atmospheric height. So, and it's not a super thick atmosphere, so it's harder to slow down using aerobraking. But for now, let's check out this centrifuge. So this is one of the larger centrifuges in the stock-alike station parts expansion redux. But yeah, it's got some cool little bunk beds. Just giving you guys a little tour here. There's an exercise room. Anyway, let's go back to the cockpit here. Do some science. You guys can pause and read that if you want. Anyway, let's start getting into the lander here. You see I've put kind of like one of these inflatable heat shields here, kind of like backwards on the top of the lander. That's actually going to be for just, it's kind of act as like a parachute almost, just to really up the drag of this craft, because the pressure of the atmosphere is really thin, so a lot of the parachutes won't open in time to slow down enough to prevent you from crashing. So we're going to be using this inflatable heat shield to kind of act as like a parachute, like a high altitude parachute almost. And now we're traveling a speed where we can deploy our parachutes. I'll just detach the inflatable heat shield, and then we'll open up the rest of the parachutes. We gotta burn the engine a little bit to make sure that we don't hit the ground too fast. And we have touchdown. This capsule is from, I think, the near future propulsion or the near future spacecraft. It adds like a bunch of new command pods, which is pretty fun. Cool. Let's plant a flag. Do some science. Alright, after all of our sightseeing and kind of just hanging out on the surface, it's time to get ready to rendezvous back with the mothership in orbit. So I'm just getting my Kerbals here back into their seats in the cockpit, and we will start to figure out how to rendezvous here. So we're going to wait till our orbit passes under kind of like the orbit of our mothership, and then we'll just be able to point towards it, kind of like target or anti-target that can tell us what angle to start our gravity turn. I detached some of the parachutes there to save on some weight. We're using this aerospike engine, and it's a 2-stage lander. We're about to run out of fuel, and I kind of have like this really small capsule pod with a small engine here to get us the rest of the way into orbit. Alright, we're in orbit. Now we just have to set up that rendezvous with the mothership with a close flyby. So I've just kind of fast forwarded through that. It's kind of tedious, but I actually ran out of fuel in the smaller capsule, so I'm just performing the rendezvous with the mothership itself. So you just kill off your relative speed and then point to the target and burn until you're right on top of it. Dang, this ship is massive compared to this little capsule. And we'll just do a spacewalk here to get back into the ship. Cool. And now we can get ready to leave the Uleg system. We'll just do a short burn to just pop out of the sphere of influence, and then we will start to plan our trajectory back to Kerbin. So there we are, leaving Uleg behind. And we're going to have to raise our periapsis up to the orbital height of the Sunorc system, which is the one I've set as my target. That's the system that the planet Sarah orbits, and the wormhole that connects to the Kerbal system is kind of like almost like a satellite moon almost of Sarah. It orbits Sarah. So I'm just burning to intersect with that star system with a 3.5 hour burn. I fast forwarded here. And then near our apoapsis, we're going to have to perform a huge inclination matching burn. And it looks like luckily we just kind of naturally got an encounter with the Sunorc system. So that's another hour-long burn. Cool, and we've got our Sunorc flyby. This is the Sunorc system like I was talking about. We're going to try to do our intersect, we're going to try to make it so that our periapsis kind of intersects the orbit of Sarah, which is kind of like this one in the middle here, this orangey one. We'll warp into the system here, and then I will perform a capture burn, just a short hour-long burn. Alright, now that we're captured, we'll set up our encounter with the Sarah system with a short maneuver here, and then we will adjust our flyby so that we enter the wormhole, kind of like very similar to how we did around Sarnus with kind of like a thread the needle type maneuver, so that we can preserve our speed even through the wormhole onto the other side in the Kerbin system. No, the Kerbal system, I mean. We'll just adjust our approach through the wormhole itself. And we'll get ready to enter again. Alright, now we're in the orbit of Sarnus. We've just escaped, though. It kind of put us on a trajectory to escape out of Sarnus. So now we're in just kind of like a really high elliptical orbit around Kerbal. And so now I'm just trying to set up a encounter with the Kerbin system. And we've got it there. And that'll be just a really short burn. And we should be drifting back to Kerbin. And I'm just going to adjust our approach here. I'm going to approach on the day side, which is actually retrograde orbit, which is in a retrograde direction relative to the planet, but I'm just going to do it so that we can not have to do this in the dark, in the night side. And we'll start our burn to circularize around Kerbin. Anyways, that's going to be our video for today, guys. Thanks for watching. In the next few episodes, we'll be exploring the rest of the planets around the black hole. It's going to be a good time, but I'll see you guys later.